Although every living creature, again, that's the vast majority, was okay for food, there was a very strict prohibition placed on the eating of animal flesh, and it was that man could not eat the blood. What was the reason for that? Because the blood is where the life is contained. Blood was only to be used for divine sacrifice, never for human consumption. Blood was the seed of life, and it was simply too holy for man to be allowed to partake of it. And we see that the importance of blood is carried over from animals to humans. Thus, murder, which biblically, in Bible talk, is the taking of human blood, is specifically prohibited. Notice that in verse 5, God hands the duty of meting out justice for homicide over to mankind. Up to now, God had dealt with it himself. And he dealt with it very differently than humans are to deal with it, because here, man is instructed that a man who kills another man is to himself be killed by other men. Remember what the penalty for murder was for Cain, when he killed his brother Abel? What was it? It was banishment. Banishment from the presence of God. God even went so far as to place a sign over Canaan so that other humans wouldn't be tempted to take matters into their own hands and harm Cain in retribution. Mere separation from God was considered as sufficient punishment. That was no longer the case. What the ancient rabbis so brilliantly point out concerning these passages is that here we find God establishing the principle of earthly government. Civil law was hereby created, with the Lord delegating some of his authority to human authorities. Later in Leviticus, God would go to great lengths to define something that human societies constantly try to rewrite, without much success, I might add: what morality and justice is. We tend to call God's definition of morality and justice the law, meaning the law of Moses, the Torah. Now, these same rabbis and scribes also came to the conclusion that if God turned over to humans the terrible manner of determining capital punishment, the God-authorized right to take a human life, to take human blood, then certainly lesser matters of life, such as authority over wives, children, servants, property, land, this was also now in man's hands. And from this came what was eventually called the 7 Noachide laws. The Noachide laws, introduced to us at the beginning of Genesis 9, were essentially the most fundamental principles of civil justice from which all other civil laws would be based. We don't actually see these 7 laws specifically enumerated at this point in the Scriptures, although thousands of years later, after Christ has come and gone, these Noahide laws will actually play a role in the determination of the Jerusalem Council of 49 AD as to the minimum behavioral requirements for Gentiles who want to fellowship with and worship alongside of Jews who have come to believe that Yeshua is their Messiah. What eventually came to be called the 7 Noahide laws are the following. First, men were prohibited from idol worship. Second, humans were not to commit blasphemy, taking God's name in vain. That's one way to do that. Third, man was not to murder. Fourth, there was to be no incest. Fifth, there was no robbing and stealing. Sixth, man was not to eat blood, nor was he to eat the meat of animals that had been strangled. Therefore, their blood hadn't been drained out of them. And seventh, man was to submit to the authority of human government.